What's up, everybody? Today for Force Friday, we're going to be comparing the Hasbro Black Series Mandalorian with the SH Figuarts Mandalorian, both of which in the Beskar armor with the jetpack. If you watched my review of the SH Figuarts this week, you'll know that I wasn't entirely enthused with it, so I think this one should be pretty interesting to watch. So let's get started, but in order to do so, we have to start with accessories. Accessory-wise, it's just really no competition. The SHF obliterates the Hasbro. The Hasbro comes with the jetpack and the two guns. The SHF comes with that, plus gun effects, whistling bird effects, flame-throwing effects, a knife, holster options, gun options. It's just, there's really no competition here at all. Build and materials. So usually this is a no-brainer win for SHF. And it is again for materials, but not for build. With finicky pieces having a hard time staying stuck in, the shoulder armor constantly popping off with the slightest bit of movement, the scope to the rifle that fell off, the hip skirts, which have a hard time rotating down, and I'm not talking about the blue ones on his hips, I'm talking about the ones that cover up the hip joint, as well as some joint inconsistencies. Hasbro is going to take it this time in the build category. Their simple and cheaper approach finally paid off, and that's where it's going to go. But the materials go to SHF for their refined plastics and more sophisticated joints. And now we'll move on to Sculpt and Paint. And looking at them from the front, I think that overall the Black Series does it better. I think the proportions are better. The SHF torso seems stumped to me. The hips seem to bow out. I think the Hasbro one is far more in line. It's far more accurate. It's far better proportioned. I also think the helmet on the SHF is too small, making his head far too small underneath. However, where the SHF does take the lead is in the soft goods cape. The fact that the Hasbro one looks so stupid, thrown over the jetpack, only helps the SHF, but unfortunately not enough to take the overall front view. Starting with the heads, you already know that I think the sculpt of the SHF is inferior compared to that of the Hasbro one. I think the Hasbro one is better proportioned. I also think that the T is a bit longer on the SHF and it kind of throws off the look to me. And while the SHF does have a better paint application on it, the Hasbro does use the metallic plastic. So in my opinion, the aesthetic cues here paint-wise are really minimal, giving Hasbro the lead. From the side view, it's pretty much the same. The sculpt work is sharper on the SHF, but the proportions are just so wonk. Of course, you don't have to deal with the cape issue though, so that's nice once again. The torso, once again, I feel like the Hasbro is better proportioned. It's longer, whereas the SHF is stunted. Now, the sculpt work on the SHF is far more sophisticated because it has like the padding and stuff sculpted on the gray part of the shirt. However, the Hasbro is no slouch there either, with tons of wrinkles and sculpt work put in as well. The chest armor is a cleaner sculpt from the SHF, but it's really quite negligible. And I think the color choices, being a little bit more muted on the Hasbro, are perhaps better for the belt buckles and grays. However, I love how the cape tucks into the SHF, whereas the cape for the Hasbro one is pretty much a complete disaster. But once again, if only by a bit, Hasbro takes the lead on this one as well. From the side, it's pretty much a tie to me. There are things I like better about the SHF. Obviously, once again, the silver on the jetpack really jumps out. The blue hip skirts, the red inside of the little grenades on his belt, etc., etc. However, I like all the wrinkles and sculpted detail in the Hasbro as well. So they might tie the profile of this view. Moving on to the arms, I feel like this is an area where the silver really pops on the SHF. However, I have to give Hasbro the sculpt credit for how their joints, while cheap and limited, do help the sculpt here. So while I like the armor deco better on the SHF, I like the overall aesthetic better on the Hasbro. Now, from the side view, I think the whistling bird and stuff is much more pronounced on the SHF, and the joints don't seem as ugly because they're a little bit better hidden. But this is still a pretty tight category, but SHF might take the arms. For the pelvis and hips, once again, I think the Hasbro just does a cleaner job. All of that engineering for the flaps and all that, it just makes SHF one look strange. And the paint applied to both regions is the same. It's just, I think the Hasbro does it better. From the side, they're about tied. I do like the red, once again, on the grenade, so I'll go ahead and give SHF the lead here, but it's really negligible. Both of them have NASA to them, all right? But anyway, I think that there's no real big difference here. I think that the flap works better on the SHF. Like, I like the blue better, and I like the size of it better, so I'll give it to SHF from the side, so to speak. Now, here's where it gets tricky. So I think the proportions look better on the Hasbro. However, there's more sculpted detail on the SHF in the thigh armor, but Hasbro has more sculpted detail in the lower leg. There's a ton of paint on each. It's a hard one to call. Either way, they both put a ton into this. I like the knee plate better on the left of the Hasbro one as well. And from the side, I'd say they're about even Steven, really. Nothing really jumps out about either that clearly takes the cake over the other. Except the Hasbro feet might be a little small, but the SHF feet might be a little big. Like, I feel like they have the wrong feet, like they should swap the feet on them. Now, from the back, the SHF is the clear winner by a landslide because the Hasbro one made no effort to rethink or rework their cape when they have an entirely different back for the figure. And as a result, it's doofy. So to round it out, they tie in the hips. The Hasbro does it better proportionately in kind of everything from the front view, but the side view kind of has to go to SHF just for the details and more shape. Figuarts takes the arms due to all the added effects like the whistling bird and stuff, and the silver armor really pops there. And they also take the thighs because the one thigh plate armor is more sculpted, cleaner, and better detailed than the Hasbro. But the Hasbro takes the lower legs, all of the extra sculpted detail they packed in. The torso, mainly due to proportions, but they tie kind of in the paint, so like Hasbro just edges them out, whereas some of the sculpted detail is better in the SH Figuarts. Hasbro kind of does everything else better. And then Hasbro, I think, does a better job with the proportions of the head, and the deco's about equal there. As a result, Hasbro takes the front view, but because of the stupid cape, Figuarts takes the rear view, so to speak. All right, let's go through articulation. So the head for the Black Series is a double ball peg from the head into the neck. And there might be there's a single from the neck into the chest. So as a result, you get the head up to there, down to there, swivel, confused dog look, etc. So that's good to go. For the SHF, did I say Black Series for the previous one? You guys know what it is. Double ball peg, it's the same engineering. Up to there, down to there, swivel, confused dog look, all works the same. Single ball peg from the chest into the abdomen. Decent swivel, sass, ab crunch forward and back all work fairly well. Double ball peg from the chest into the abdomen, single from the abdomen into the pelvis, limited swivel, limited forward, good bit back, decent amount of sass. A disc hinge that goes into a ball peg in the chest, but the armor has to go above the shoulder, which is unfortunate. 90 degrees out, swivel around, a bit of a butterfly. Disc hinge that goes to a ball peg in the chest. The shoulder pad gets up and out of the way for 90 degrees out, swivel around, but more of a butterfly. Bicep swivel at the elbow, bicep swivel at a cut joint. Single hinged elbow gets you maybe slightly less than 90 degrees. Double hinged elbow gets you almost the full run. Wrist swivel, hinge in, out. Ball hinge for a wrist that allows you to get in, out, or up, down, depending on which way you have it oriented, plus the swivel. T-jointed ball joints for hips that get you out to there, forward and back to there. Universal joints with drop-down thighs that get you, I think, a bit further out. I'll double check it, and a bit more forward and back. Thigh swivel, thigh swivel. Double jointed knee for the full run. Double jointed knee for, it's negligible. Ankle tilt up, ankle tilt down with a rocker, ankle tilt up, ankle tilt down with a rocker, and a toe hinge. And so what we have here is Hasbro taking it at the chest, but I have to tie out the waist because Hasbro doesn't technically have a waist joint, and Figuarts does get a little bit there. I don't know. These categories can sometimes get a little tricky to remain objective. I want to give it to Hasbro. I'm going to give Hasbro the knees as well because the range is slightly more. Figuarts, I have to give the shoulders, mainly due to the extra butterfly, but also the way the shoulder armor articulates. I have to give them the elbow and the wrist, and obviously the foot joint, and they tie and everything else. Scale wise, I think that they both kind of work, but I just feel like the SHF just isn't as impressive. It doesn't occupy the space the same way. It looks weird. It looks misshapen. The proportions are just too off. That being said, for what it's worth, the SHF Yoda is far better than the Black Series one. I'm not going to do a whole comparison of that. But yeah, I'm sorry. It just doesn't occupy the space the same way to me. Likeness-wise, I think deco and stuff, they're both pretty much on the ball, but the proportions just look so much better on the Hasbro to me. I can't not see it, but the cape looks better on the Figuarts. The paint on the armor on the thigh is better on the Figuarts, plus it's sculpted to be accurate, and the undergarment, for lack of a better term, between his armor and abdomen is more accurate on the Figuarts, but I just can't get past the proportion issue. So I'm gonna tie them out for likeness. All right, which one do you think looks better?
This one.
And which one feels better?
This one moves better.
Okay. All right, Jana, which one of these do you think looks better?
Probably this one.
All right, which one feels better?
This one.
All right.
Oops. Whoops.
All right, Selena, which one of these do you think looks better?
That one.
This one? Mm-hmm. Okay. And touch them. Which one feels better to you?
That one.
This one? Mm-hmm. Okay. Which one do you think looks better?
That one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And feel them?
Good.
Which one do you like better feeling-wise?
That one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I tie them out with gimmicks because neither of them really have it, and I tie them out with likeness because neither of them really nail it, but they both nail kind of different elements of it. The SHF nailing kind of the color scheme and color palette, some of the sculpting details, and the Hasbro nailing the proportions. I gave Hasbro the points for the build because it doesn't fall apart. Sculpt, which is tricky, but just going through piece by piece, a lot of the joints for Hasbro end up making the sculpt look cleaner. Now, to be fair, I gave SHF the point for hardware based on that same methodology because their joints are better. I also gave SHF the point for materials and accessories, obviously. But I gave Hasbro the point for scale because, once again, the proportions and the height, and then they won feel with my family, and of course it's cheaper, whereas the SHF wins in articulation, paint, obviously, and presence, which makes sense for a total score of 6-5 Figuarts. Very, very close. So, really close, and in my opinion, a far better representation of these two than the last time we did a versus of these same molds, to be fair. It just goes to show how a couple shortcomings on the SHF side can really sacrifice a lot of key points that they're usually used to walking away with, i.e. build. That's something that's usually a given, but in a situation like this where there's QC issues regarding the build, it gives Hasbro just the right amount of opportunity to kind of leverage themselves into a position they wouldn't normally be in. So the truth is that this score is pretty much reflective of how I see these figures. The SHF is probably technically better. However, it's not better by much, but the price is greater by much. And that's what needs to be taken into account with this decision. I think this is a really interesting assessment of these two. And I think it's pretty accurate, both in terms of its objectivity, but also in terms of how I feel about it. That I'm not sure I would have been able to articulate having not done the comparison, if that makes sense. Hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are staying sane. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.